think we're ready. Now that I got myself straight. Let's see if
Sure.
No, I'm not. We'll find out here in about 35 seconds. How good my memory is. So first, just want to thank our panelists for joining us today. I appreciate you all taking the time out of your very busy schedules and fighting the parking situation here to come and share your knowledge with these students. Just to remind you all, as the panelists and the class, what we're here for. The idea is to give the students in AEC 302, which many of you all may know as farm management, you know, a connection to the real world. They listen to me talk for an hour and 15 minutes twice a week, and we have lab for upwards of 2 hours once a week. And you know, that's all good and great, but to actually get to talk to people that are actually doing these things, I think is really important, and we're trying to make that connection beyond the classroom, you know, to the applied real world. So with that being said, they had to write a paper before the panel today talking about some of the challenges that they see in agriculture, and hopefully they will reflect back on those during this process and ask some questions. What I'm going to do now is try not to mess up your all's names in the order in which you said, and give a brief introduction to you all. And then I'm going to open it up to you all to give a much better introduction to yourselves, and if you would give 2 or 3 items that you think are challenges and or opportunities currently in the agricultural world, and we'll go from there. So first we've got Dan Rosenberg, who is the owner of Rosenberg Thoroughbred Consulting. You were previously the president and chief operating officer of 3 Chimneys and the general manager of 3 Chimneys before that. And then Brian, founder and president of American Farm Investors. You have spent 10 years trading commodities, and you're in farm management with 8 properties right now. That's
about right.
Okay. We've got Matt Koch, owner, managing partner of
Shawhan
Place in Paris, Kentucky. And then last but not least, we got Brad Burke, who's the regional vice president of Farm Credit Services of Mid-America. So with that being said, Dan, if you would, do a much better job than I just did and get us started here.
I started riding when I was 9 years old and showed horse and jumpers and worked after school and weekends and summers with horses since I was about 12. Always wanted to make my living in the horse business. Ended up in Kentucky. I was at 3 Chimneys for 30 years. As far as the difference between general manager and COO, my boss, Robert Clay, came into my office one day and said, "I'm changing your title." I did not get a raise, just a change in title. And I went home and told my children, "I'm now president and COO of 3 Chimneys Farm." And my daughter said, "There's no L on the end of it. You are not cool. You never have been cool. You never will be cool." So that's that. As far as challenges I see for agriculture, I don't know lots about general agriculture, but I think one of the huge challenges is that it's harder and harder for the small family farm to make it, and huge agribusiness type farms seem to be dominating the landscape. Acquisition of capital has to be a huge problem, buying land and buying equipment. And for the horse business, and specifically for the thoroughbred industry specifically, I think we have a declining fan base and a declining ownership base, and it's our own fault, and we need to do something about it.
I'm Brian Luftman, and yes, I'm now the president and founder of American Farm Investors here in Lexington, Kentucky. My background is, I'm not an ag background, I'm a finance background. I was a commodity trader, as John said, up in Chicago for 10 years, traded on the floor, one of the guys wearing the coats, doing the hand signals and yelling, and did that for 10 years and traded cattle options, and then decided a few years ago that I wanted to move my family back to Kentucky, and I decided to come up with to formulate a company that would help investors bring money into farmland because I think farmland is a really smart, wise inflation protection investment. It's a cash flowing investment. If you own land outright, you can make a lot of money off of it. Not a whole lot, but it's a very consistent income. And so we're bridging the gap and making this somewhat almost like turning farmland into like a little bit of a financial product. So we manage, I think it's 9 farms now, all over central Kentucky. We participated in the Kentucky hemp pilot program this year, grew 35 acres of hemp. We grow corn and wheat for Maker's Mark and Buffalo Trace bourbon. We grow non-GMO soybeans, and like I said, we've got investors all over the country, and they pool money, and I go buy the farms in central Kentucky, and we're looking to buy more farmland. So the challenges I see right now with agriculture, and especially with people sitting in your seats trying to get into ag, is like Dan said, it's tough. There's a whole, you're competing with big, huge macro businesses that are doing agricultural production. And so, but I think we've reached this point where there's a huge movement towards organic farming and much more specialty crops and those type of things that I think we've reached the peak of how hard it is to get into a small farm and to actually make an income of farming. I think that there's going to be a whole new era of when a younger, willing farmer can come in and make it work on 100 acres in a much more specialized type of format. So I think that it's a challenge that's turning into a strength, I think. Also, grain prices are as low as they've been in comparison to other commodities in a long time, and that makes it very challenging to produce grain for a farming standpoint. I mean, most farmers are having a hard time breaking even right now, and so I think that's going to change. I think that grain prices are going to rebound, and it's whoever can stick it out. But those are the 2 main challenges I see, is just acquiring land, bringing capital into it, and then making it work once you actually have the land, just from a macro farming aspect.
My name's Matt Koch. I grew up in Paris, about 30 minutes from here, on Claiborne Farm. I came to the University of Kentucky. I was one of 10 children, which is important. As the story goes on, he's learned about me. I'm number 5, so forgotten middle child. Point is, when I turned 18, plates broke. Paid my way through college shoeing horses. There's no oil, no oil field, no oil well, no big inheritance backing me. Graduated college debt-free, 100% from getting up in the morning, 5 o'clock, going to the track shoeing horses. When I graduated college, went to the Marine Corps. I spent 8 years in the Marine Corps as an intelligence officer, went to Kosovo, went to Afghanistan. Came back after when I got out active duty, came home, started my own business. Shawhan place, that was in 2005. We opened the doors on that, and it was just me when I opened the door with no truck, no shank, no pitchfork, and I put up $3,000, and now we've got about 12 full-time employees and run about 500 acres. Farm's just been growing like gangbusters, so there is some hope. The small guy can get it done, but you're going to have to work to get there. Nobody's going to give it to you. 2 big problems I see facing agriculture today. Number 1 is labor. We've got a major problem with labor. I don't have an answer for that one. Right now it's a Hispanic workforce. There's all kinds of talk going on with immigration right now, what they're going to do and shut across the border. If they would, in my opinion right now in central Kentucky, and probably stands for most agriculture, if they cut that workforce off, if they cut that labor pool off, you're going to see a major change in all agriculture around here. And I'm not sure where it's going to go, because we can't go back as far as going to the local help and pulling our general labor from there. It's not happening. That bridge has been burned. It's gone. Second problem is, how does a young person get started? You're coming out of college debt, whatever you've lined up. Nobody's left you with a huge family farm. How are you going to get started? And if you do get started, I'll give you a great example right now. I'm trying to buy one of the farms next to me. It's a 30-acre farm, but I need it. I got big dreams of turning it into a training center. The barn I want to build on it is going to cost more than the actual land cost. So how does somebody who doesn't own an oil well get out there and make all that happen, and talking with your bankers and getting everything out there? And my short answer for that one is, there is help out there. Get out there, get with your county extension agents. UK does a great job. Find the old guys out there that are retiring, that are looking for somebody to take it over, and that's what I've been doing, and doing land contracts, and there are ways to get your foot in the door and get started. Nobody's going to give it to you, but there's ways to do it.
My name is Brad Burke. I'm a Regional Vice President for Farm Credit Mid-America. Those of you that may not be familiar with Farm Credit Mid-America, we're a $21.4 billion lending cooperative. We operate in Kentucky, Tennessee, Indiana, and Ohio. Have offices here throughout Kentucky. I'm a native and a resident of Fleming County, up in the northeast part of the state. Been with Farm Credit now about 10 years, but I'm also a part-time farmer. Very much grew up with dirt on my hands and farming in my blood, I guess. So I'm a production-oriented kind of guy. We have about 250 acres in Fleming County too. We specialize in beef cattle, soybean production, and hay production. 91 graduate of the University of Kentucky. Actually, my degree is in animal science, and started out with a company called Pig Improvement Company when I graduated from college. And Pig Improvement Company, PIC, was the largest seed stock provider in the world at the time. And so I spent a little time in southern Kentucky, moved to Illinois, and then on to Pennsylvania, and got married. My wife was from the area, and so the good old Kentucky home called, and we moved back. And interestingly enough, what I came back and did, I stepped out of agriculture for a while. I stepped into the construction industry for a while, but had an opportunity. Was working with a local banker that I've always known, and I had worked with him prior to coming back home on a business proposition to put together some cash flow statements and income statements, and it didn't happen, but just so happened it opened up a door for me to enter banking. About 6 months later, he had an opportunity for an ag loan officer, and I took that position. Was with that local bank for a while, and had an opportunity to move on with Farm Credit. So I've been in lending now for about 18, 19 years, and kind of come back around. My wife and I named our farm Full Circle Farms. We've landed about a half a mile from home from where we originally started. So it's funny how life works. But challenges, I think these guys have addressed them very well. I'll step out and name one additional challenge I think that is for real, not only for agriculture but for any industry, and that's the regulatory pressure that we're all facing. You know, it's a big concern that government is involved on a daily basis and on an increasing basis in our daily lives, telling us what to do and how we need to do it, and it increases costs significantly for farmers and small business owners, and so that's an environment that needs to change in the future, and it is a big struggle and a big challenge for all of us.
Just one question.
Sure, Josh. I got a question. I forgot your name. Commodity trader. Can you talk a little bit more about that hemp program?
Yes.
That you're talking about? Just enlighten me on that.
It's the Kentucky hemp pilot program, and basically hemp is legal if you grow it under the umbrella of either a state or a state-sponsored university. As far as I understand, don't quote me on this, but in conjunction with, let's say we were to grow it in conjunction with University of Kentucky Ag Department or the Kentucky Department of Ag. We chose to go Kentucky Department of Ag, so Jamie Comer's office, the Ag Commissioner's office, sent out they had an application process. You can get a memorandum of understanding, which is essentially a license to grow hemp in Kentucky. And what ends up happening is the Kentucky Department of Ag owns my hemp crop in my field while we're growing it. Now we're the ones that are doing all the cultivation of that hemp and the marketing and everything. And when it comes time to harvest it, that's when the crop becomes ours. It's because technically it's illegal to grow hemp because the DEA can't distinguish it very easily from marijuana. It smells like it, it looks like it. If you guys were watching the news, some moron from Danville actually stole 7 of our hemp plants. Those were ours that we're trying to sell in the Walmart parking lot. He thought it was marijuana, and that clown is in jail. So, but the point is it's illegal to grow it. And the Farm Bill, actually, Mitch McConnell helped get it into the Farm Bill that it was, as an experiment process, we could, as long as we were willing to share our data, you can grow hemp in Kentucky. And Kentucky is one of the only states that is allowed to grow hemp, as far as I know. So hopefully that expands. Hopefully, we grew it in conjunction with a group out of Colorado that wanted to grow hemp in Kentucky. They found our firm, and we made it happen for them. We've got a lot of hemp grain. We did it for grain. So we ended up with over 1,000 pounds of grain per acre. We think it might be a very financially viable crop in the future. And because if we even priced out the grain, I mean, typically people are getting, I hear anywhere from $2 to $5 a pound for hemp seed. I mean, you do the math on that, that works out a lot better per acre than corn or soybeans or wheat. Now, it's a whole lot of challenges in that, and you have to find a market for it. It's not like you can just drive to a barge, but that's my long-winded answer of how the program works, I guess.
Appreciate it.
If I can interject something, historically, my significant other lives on a farm in Farms, a farm that has been in her family for well over 200 years. And during the Depression, her father nearly lost the farm, and during World War I was able to save it by growing hemp. It was a huge cash crop here in Kentucky, and should be again.
Claiborne Farm is the same way? Yeah, probably.
What is the current market for hemp?
That is
Is that the,
great question. What the current market? It could be. I mean, there are so many people that are trying to figure that out right now. There's a lot of processors that are the easy low-hanging fruit, I guess, and the highest potential return is in CBD oil, which is cannabidiol. It is a compound in hemp that is non-psychoactive. It's not THC that makes you high, but it has been shown, and there's not FDA research that this is kind of hearsay, because the FDA does not sign off on this as a drug or a natural supplement. However, there are firms that are selling CBD oil and it's curing childhood epilepsy, or it's helping with cancer, it's helping with a lot of with Alzheimer's. It's a neurostimulant that has pretty well-known results. If you look up CBD, it's a really unique compound that is not found in anything except for hemp plants. So there's a whole lot of people that are extracting it from the plants right now and then selling it on their own. Now, I think there's going to be a large market for CBD as an additive and nutritional supplement in animal feed, in human consumption, etc. But right now, it's not FDA regulated. It's a it's a supplement of some sort. That's how they classify it right now.
I have a question for Matt. So I saw that you guys had 52 yearlings go through your September sale. What were like some of the major, I mean, obviously not all of them are going to be sale toppers, so what was the hardest part about like giving some up, or, you know, making choices on what the stud fees were versus how much you're going to get out of them at the sale?
Well, I think Dan will back me up. It's easy to sell a good horse.
Yeah.
Your horses, when you sell at the front end, those are very easy to sell. I mean, you take them up there, you roll them, everybody at the sales wants them that day. You really cut your teeth on the horses at the bottom end. You get head in book 6, and I mean, those are some tough sales. You know, not as, maybe they don't have the pedigrees, maybe they got x-ray issues. But it's just like everything else. You don't look at it, I can't look at it as an individual. Right? I mean, you do look at it as an individual, but when you're out there doing your numbers, it's a crop, okay? And that's why I've got to look at, when I take these yearlings to market, I've got to look at them like they're a crop. And I've got to think about it as a total crop. Because if I just thought about this horse, and if you think how much money you're losing on this one horse or making on this horse, I think you could lose your mind. I know ultimately that is how it's done, but I have to look at it as an entire crop, you know, and then look at at the sales and kind of know what my numbers need to be and where my expenses are and what's going to happen out of there. You also have a lot of different owners for all of those horses, so there's all these horses have different, you know, there's different goals for a lot of these horses, and you know, what the owner, what the outcome wants to be. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
So Dan, was there a difference at 3 Chimneys or in your business with that?
We sold about, on average, we probably sold 150 yearlings every year, and they would range from the top end to the very bottom, just like what Nat is saying. Interesting, we talk about as a crop, it's very hard to really evaluate how much any particular horse is worth. We found that we could be 100% off one way or the other all the time. But it was kind of interesting that almost all the time, if we looked at the bottom line, what our gross was going to be, we pretty much hit it. Be huge surprises with some horses, but The gross is usually pretty much what we forecast. I take a little bit of semantic exception to, and I hear it all the time from the sales companies, from buyers, from sellers, that there's plenty of money for a good horse. There's plenty of money for an exceptional horse. And it's not that the rest of these horses are bad. They're good horses, they're just not wow. And those horses are really, really hard to sell. Dealing with customers at a sale, and again, like Matt, most of the horses we sell are not our horses, they're for other people, and we get a commission on selling them. So even if you lost money with us selling your yearling, we get paid. We try to do the best we can with every horse, because obviously our commissions are the best. But, you know, every owner says, you know, tell me the truth, don't sugarcoat it. What do you think about my horse, and what do you think it's worth? And nobody wants to hear your kid is fat, dumb, and ugly. And there's an old adage that nothing enhances a horse's value like ownership. And people have ridiculous expectations sometimes, and that can be very, very hard. That you've actually had a good sale for this person, and they go home disappointed.
For either of the equine people, what do you think that pedigree actually plays into for the racing industry? Because it seems like you get these horses that sell for like hundreds of thousands of dollars and even millions because they have these amazing pedigrees and they don't do anything. And then you get horses like California Chrome or whoever that come from nothing and they just blow the competition out of the water.
Well, let me explain that. First of all, there's different, people are buying horses for different reasons, and there are some people that are buying horses they just want an athlete, they just want to go out and have fun, and they don't need to spend hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to find a horse that looks athletic regardless of what the pedigree is. There are other people that, whether they're buying fillies or colts, are looking at breeding stock. And you're right that most of those horses don't do anything, but most horses of any kind don't do anything. And statistically, horses with a deeper pedigree have a statistically better chance of reproducing horses of their quality, which is why they cost more. Families do matter.
When they're coming down that final stretch, you want them, like the old timer told me, he said, you want them to like reach over and trip over the third dam. Like that family's so deep and so powerful that when they're out there, you know, any horse can run a certain distance for so much time, but then that's when it really comes out. That's when the pedigree really matters. It's the final, who's got the heart to get there.
I mean, most horses don't make it. Most horses are not good race horses, and that is true whether we're talking about $1 million yearlings or $10,000 yearlings. But $1 million horses have a much significantly higher percentage of good horses than cheaper horses. I mean, significantly more. And actually, the Blood Horse did a study a number of years ago of the top priced yearling of the year every year, and almost all of them made back zero on their investment. But if you had bought them all over a 20-year period, you would have made a fortune.
Your question? Oh, go ahead.
I know Dan touched on it briefly, but this can be to any of you guys. Do you think land scarcity is going to be an issue in the future if it's not already, with horses or crops?
I'll say, just from this point of view, I mean, the first thing that jumped in my mind when you asked that question was there's a lot of big money flowing into central Kentucky, as it always has, from around the world to buy real estate because it's a really good investment for them. But beyond that, I live in Woodford County, and we are fighting a constant battle for land use and to keep the county from being paved. I mean, our mayor said we want to be more like Nicholasville. That's a huge ongoing fight.
Yeah, it's, I'm on the Economic Development Board for Bourbon County, and I mean, it's tough, and just trying to grow my farm and get parcels of land, and we just had an auction the other day, and you know, went to it and went a little bit higher than I could go, and you know, I hate it because the guy who bought it, you know, he's young guy, a couple years younger than I am, and I'm like, I just said, crap, I'm not, in my lifetime, that's not gonna come back up.
Probably gonna build on it.
Yeah, well, not gonna develop, but I mean, he's gonna have his own farm, whatever, it's not coming up for sale, I mean, he's got young children and everything, and and so that's what kind of is, I'm sitting there doing this stuff, and land scarcity to me is like, is that gonna become available for me to grow my enterprise? And, it's not like the next farm's gonna come up for sale, and it's tough to get a hold of it that way, but we're battling, I'm on the economic development board, and it's a delicate situation. I'm sitting there, I want something for my kids to be able to come home. I want my kids to be able to go to college, graduate, and come back to Bourbon County and something be there for them. But our population's only grown like 650 people in the last 10 years or something like that, and there's nothing for them to come back to. And for them to be able to come back, there's got to be some kind of growth in the county. So how you manage it with keeping your farm and keeping what got you there and the history and the horses and the hospitality and keeping that there, yet bringing in some industry, and, the industrial parks and bread factory and all that stuff they're talking about bringing in, and you've got to have some of that. I mean, I'm realistic. I know that some of that has to come in there, but man, the last thing you want to see is good farmland go to use for it. And I don't have a real answer for it. I mean, it's tough. And I know this. I know we don't want to end up with a giant, Nicholasville on our hands. We want to be able to manage it like Bardstown and some of the Harrisburg. And I know Woodford County's fighting the same fight. It's tough.
From a
Sorry. I was just gonna say, do you think keeping the Walmart out of there was helped in that situation?
That's a more of a complicated issue than that. The land that Walmart was going to go on was already annexed by the city and was already zoned for it. And there were two fights going on. One of them was people who just don't want Walmart at all anywhere, and other people saying that's the wrong place for a Walmart because of traffic problems and drainage problems, basically. I don't I'm not a big fan of Walmarts, but I don't have a huge problem with a Walmart in Woodford County if it's in the right place. I know that right now, and this is one of the big fights and pushes that we're making, there's already 1,800 acres already zoned for development that has not been developed in Woodford County. And what our push is, don't expand the urban services area and don't annex more land until we've filled that in. Infill's really, really important. We got empty shopping centers, and businesses need to come there before we go out into the county.
I was going to answer your question. From a global standpoint, land scarcity, I think there's no question that it's a simple math equation. There are less arable farmland acres in the world every year by 1 million acres, but due to population sprawl, desertification, climate change, water sources drying up, and erosion. So those type of, not to mention that the world population is obviously growing. We're supposed to we're rapidly approaching 8 billion, and we're going to hit 9 in all of our lifetimes. So the amount of arable farmland per capita or per person or per human on the earth it's a shrinking number. So the land scarcity only has to be an ongoing, tougher problem. There's no way they're going to cut down enough forests to be able to keep up with the demand for food. And so, yes, the answer is absolutely it's going to be a problem and it won't go away.
I think in our area, it's not so much development driven that is causing a scarcity, but we have some pockets of very valuable farmland that we're seeing some producers from outside other states come in. An example is we have a great number of Mennonite farmers from the Shenandoah Valley, Virginia, that are moving in currently. They're buying land that are 20 years ago, competition for land came from your neighbor. Your neighbor now is somewhere that's 3 states away. And so what we see is in those areas of the Shenandoah Valley where the population is so great and land is $12,000 an acre to put into production agriculture, it's not feasible for someone starting out, so they move to less populated areas to look for opportunities to start. So I think land competition and scarcity is a real threat.
I know you said you raise non-GMO crops. Have you had success raising those compared to like GMO crops, or how is that going?
I'm not the farmer on the property, by the way. I have tenant farmers that do the work for me. So as far as agricultural production questions, I'm not quite as well versed, but there's a fine line on, you get a premium to produce non-GMO. Like we get a premium when we sell our soybeans. However, the benefit of a GMO, a genetically modified soybean or corn, is it's less, has less disease problems and higher yields. So if you're gonna, you walk a fine line, do I want to produce GMO corn and have a better yield, or non-GMO corn and sell it for a higher price? And so the fact is you can grow non-GMO corn with pretty good, I guess, modern farming practices. So it's not like you can still, it's not organic. You know, non-GMO does not mean it's not organic, and you can still spray, you can still do some of the practices that help keep weeds out, etc. But it's a tough line. I think that the market is pushing for more or less GMO products. I mean, everything you read says that people want non-GMO. However, it's until they're willing to pay for the premium that it costs, I think GMO products are gonna, I mean, I think the nationwide average of corn produced in America is over 90% GMO. If I'm not sure of that, but I believe it is over 90%.
Do you think that comes from like lack of education, as far as like you said, GMO's not necessarily organic, and I know a lot of people don't know that. Do you think that the market is that way and the restrictions are that way because of the lack of education on the consumer side of it?
Certainly, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you hate to call all the consumers naive, but how many people could tell you the difference between GMO or organic, or even what GMO stands for? I mean, I'd say 90% of the country probably doesn't care. And I mean, they read about it, but they still go buy corn or whatever, or corn. I mean, corn isn't how many products in the grocery store, way more than you would think. And most of it is genetically modified corn. So unless somebody really takes a stand and says, I'm gonna buy only non-GMO in a grocery store, in an organic food store, I mean, I'd say the majority of the country doesn't care yet.
If we were to GMO label everything, what do you think the effect on the consumer would be?
Again, I still think that you think it's a huge number of how many people care, and I really don't think it's as big as you would think. I think the high majority of our country is going to buy the cheapest product that they can feed their family with, for now. Until you prove to them that it is significantly bad for their health, and they're educated enough to read about that. I mean, the educated, smart, wealthy people in America are buying non-GMO, so there is a reason to buy it and to pay that premium. I mean, there are health studies that say that non-GMO is healthier for you. So it is, but the fact is that the bulk of the society doesn't know, or they don't care.
Or can't afford.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, this could be for any of you guys. With the declining labor force, do you think it'd be reasonable for the government to like step up and offer incentives such as like higher wages to get people back onto working on the farm? Or do you guys think that's just not worth it at all?
I've
I
been-
got a lot of opinions on that. Higher wages, not the answer.
Well, forgetting what the government does or doesn't do with the minimum wages, this is a soapbox that I've been on for years. I think you'd agree probably the average in Kentucky is 10 horses per groom.
Yeah.
And if we raised our board rates $1 a day, that would cost the owner of a horse $365 a year. It's pretty insignificant in terms of what this horse is costing them now. And we could give that groom $10 a day more, $60 a week more on their paycheck. That's life-changing for a lot of these people, and I think we ought to be doing that. We do not pay enough. We're talking about skilled labor. We're talking about work that's really hard physically. You burn up in the summer, you freeze your ass off in the winter. It's dangerous, and we don't pay enough.
You know how many people a month I have stop at my farm and ask me to sign a sheet saying that they came there and applied for a job and desperately do not want me to give them a job. Get rid of that crap. We'll fix a lot of labor problems. A lot of labor problems. My Hispanic laborers are all $12 an hour. That's more than any other farm's paying them. My guys don't sit though. I mean, we go hard all day long. They absolutely love it. They know if they're done by 3:30, they can go home. They know if it goes till 4:30 or 5, that's okay. I mean, they're in it. They breakfast with me on Sunday mornings. We're a pretty tight-knit group, and we're a family, and they know if they need something, they can come to me, and, you know, I'll make sure they get it. And I've got a good bunch of group. I have had zero success hiring locals to come to the farm. Since I've gone to a Hispanic workforce or college-educated workforce to run it for me, my amount of theft on my farm has gone down significantly. The problem is our local force, your local force that you're getting, your local high school graduate does not want to go to a horse farm and work. Either one, they're good enough stock that they're going to go and get on with Toyota. Okay, they're going to go and get on with Toyota. They're going to make good money. They're going to do very well for themselves. The other half of them are the ones who are just not go-getters, and they're going to come out there. They don't want to put in the hours. They don't want to put in the work, and they'd much rather sit at home and get the paycheck mailed to their house.
Do you sign their form?
Hell no.
Good for you.
As a senior, my next semester is my last semester, and I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. As a female wanting to go into the thoroughbred industry because it's so old and there's a lot of older people that don't believe that females can do as good of a job as men can do. What do you guys think?
It's female dominated.
It is. I want to tell you, when I came to Kentucky in 1973, outside of the office, there wasn't a single woman working on any thoroughbred farm in central Kentucky. I was the assistant manager at Calumet Farm, and my daughter at the age of 3 was the first female ever in Calumet Farm's breeding shed. Now, I would guess that nearly half of the workforce is female. And I would say that in terms of the people that I had working for me who were capable of moving on and taking on management roles, a huge percentage of them were female. And I think the future's yours.
Yeah, I agree 100%. The future in the thoroughbred industry is with females.
But use that as motivation.
Yeah, no.
Have that as a chip on your shoulder that
You know
someone
why?
said you couldn't.
They're working hard.
Right.
The females are coming to the farm and they want it, and they are flat. I mean, the guys ought to be embarrassed because the females are flat running over the guys. And I get a lot of interns. I've got a big basis we have is usually we have 2 Chimney interns, 2 UK interns going at one time. Usually 3 out of the 4 are female, and they run circles. They throw hay better. Everything they do, they want to learn. I mean, they just go at it. And I'm talking like some of them been, just 90-pound girls, and they want to do it. And then most of them have stayed on with me. We've had 3 get the Irish National Stud coming off our farm. They absolutely love it. They'll actually give the medicine. They take care of the
like
horses.
the Irish National Stud? Did they
Yes,
like
do.
it?
You can talk about it. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm going to apply to it, that's why.
No, Courtney Schneider, who's with us right now, she's been with us since she was a freshman at UK. She just graduated, now she's going to it. But 100% thoroughbred industry belongs to the females right now.
All the men in this room should be offended. You guys should, come on. Now it's your turn to be motivated by the fact that someone says you can't do it, as well as the women.
As far as handling horses too, I heard for so long women aren't strong enough to handle a tough horse. And I was taught all my horsemanship. I mean, I've worked for people that polished me, but my basic horsemanship I learned from a fantastic woman. And she was about this big, and she told us kids again and again and again, the horse is bigger than you are, the horse is stronger than you are, the horse is faster than you are. The only chance you have is to be smarter. And I see, women don't try to overpower them. Some men don't try to overpower them. But if that's your approach, you lose. So don't let anybody tell you that you're not strong enough.
Thank you all for coming in and talking, by the way.
I have two questions. One, do you have any opinion on the TPP, especially related to Kentucky's exports, such as like horses or tobacco or any other commodities? And then second question has to do with the credit sector. Is that, since there's so many problems facing the agricultural world right now, are lenders going to be more willing to lend in the future, or is it going to be more that they want to be safe?
I'll take the second question. You know, I think there's a little bit of a false information out there that it's so bad in the ag sector right now. There's a downturn from what it was 3 years ago in terms of commodity prices, corn and beans, beef cattle. Not sure what the horse segment is doing, but you know, there are some folks that are still having some profitability. There are a lot of folks that have had some wildly successful years the last 3 or 4, and so they've built up a fairly sizable working capital reserve that can help them get through some difficult times right now. So I guess to answer your question is in terms of how a lender's going to look at it, we look at it individually, case by case. We don't just paint with a broad brush that you know, the entire cattle industry is suffering a downturn, or the entire corn industry is suffering a downturn. We look case by case, producer by producer, because everybody manages a little bit differently. But I think you will see. I guess I'll toot the horn of farm credit. That's our specialty. We've been in agriculture, it'll be 100 years next year. That's our focus. That's our industry. So we don't turn our back on farmers. There are some local banks. I used to work at a local bank that will come and go based on the profitability of agriculture. They're in the good times, they're out in the bad. And so it's very important that you identify a lender that is there for you, understands your industry, and is there to support you going forward. But just to paint with a broad brush to say that you know, everything's going to be tightened down and it will be tougher for borrowers going forward, I don't think is the case.
One thing I wanted to mention to all of you in regards to that is if you're looking at a loan, I'm assuming, and you'll probably confirm this, if you see a farmer that some young person comes into your office and says, hey, I got this idea, I'm going to buy X amount of acres, I'm going to buy this amount of cows or this amount of equipment, etc. We've got this magical business plan, this dream. Most of the time that lender is probably not going to lend to you. Compared to if the same person walked in a year after saying, I did this on 10 acres, I had this amount of success, I did it on a very small scale, but let me prove to you how this is scalable. And so my point is, prove it on a very small scale, whether it's with your first horse, or whether it's with 10 acres of specialty crops, or it's you were an intern for X and you did this and on your acres that you managed. However you can prove that you're a proven winner, a bank is most likely going to lend to you instead of someone with a really good business plan that they haven't executed on.
You're exactly right. Results matter.
So no matter what your first step you do after you graduate, I would say take a lot of notes, figure out how am I going to make this financially work out, because it always comes down to whether it's your passion or not. It comes down to whether you're making money or not on whether a banker is going to give you money to do something. And I hear a lot of people that have good business plans, but at the same time, you got to prove it. And then the money will follow. That's my opinion.
Your banker needs to be on speed dial. You need to be talking to them a lot. And you need to have a banker, whoever your loan officer is, you need somebody that knows you and knows your program, and you need to be honest with them about everything. Don't be like, try to hide this or try to hide that and try to hide a little bit of debt here and there, because you can get yourself in trouble real fast. Be 100% honest and make sure Farm Credit and Tammy Pugh out there is helping me out a bunch. And just be 100% honest, and that way you don't get yourself overextended, because there's nothing worse than not having any money, borrowing money, and then getting yourself overextended and having less money. That can be a bad situation.
So always remember, a lender, their goal is to loan you money. It's how we make money. Just like you sell a horse, that's their product they're selling. A lender's selling money. And so put your best foot forward. Make sure that you're being honest, coming with talk to your lender, just what he was saying. Build that relationship. That's huge. I can tell you there are a lot of people that in tough times tend to shy away from their lender. They don't want to talk to them. That doesn't develop a good relationship. When it looks like times are tough, go in, make an appointment, sit down in front of them and talk through, because their goal is to help you out. That's what we're there for.
And then borrow enough that they're your partner.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then they really want to make you succeed. You just got another free advisor.
Tricks of the trade.
Yeah.
In the long term, and specifically on a large scale, how much of a problem, or how much are y'all concerned with water shortages, if at all, and specifically in Kentucky? Is that something that's even on y'all's radar?
It's not on.
We've got plenty of water here. Other parts of the country, obviously, that's not true. I worry about water quality here in Kentucky. I worry about that a lot. There are a lot of horse farms still that don't handle their manure properly, for example, which contaminates groundwater, and I think we need to do a better job of that. But in terms of quantity of water, we've never had a shortage.
There's not a whole lot of groundwater in Kentucky. It's very hard if you're drilling water and trying to get trying to find an aquifer like you can in Missouri. But I think that the actual water is going to be a net benefit to Kentucky significantly. There's companies from California, Arizona who are dealing with massive water shortages that are looking for land in Kentucky now because it rains. We get 50 inches of rain a year compared to even Illinois, which is just north of us in Indiana, they only get 35. And so if people are looking in the south, in Kentucky, I think that, and there's a lot of running water. You're absolutely right. There's ample rainfall and running water and bodies of water here, but there's not a lot of groundwater. I don't know where I'm getting at with that, but the fact is, there's a difference. And the typical, for an irrigation farming, my point is, we try to get irrigation farming as you take away the main variable, which is water, in crop production. And it's hard to find a water source that's big enough to fit any farm in Kentucky unless you're on a river or on a lake, really. So you just sit back and wait for it to rain. That's why you don't see a whole lot of irrigation equipment in Kentucky, if any.
Can you look into your magic ball? You made the comment that you think grain prices are going to rebound at some point. Can you?
I mean, I've been wrong for a couple of years on that one. You know, I was a commodity and trader for 10 years. You would think that I would be able to predict prices. Anyone that can tell you they can predict where prices are going is lying, or they're delusional. You cannot, nobody knows. That is the number one magical thing about efficient markets, is that nobody knows where they're going. However, supply and demand economics, what I said earlier, the world population is going up, the amount of farmland is going down, people are using corn for way more than just food and grain and everything else. I think that right now the prices are so depressed because we've had 3 straight years of dynamite weather in the Midwest, where we produce almost all the corn for the world. If we have a couple bad years of weather, that corn price is going to shoot right back up to where I think it should be in the $5 to $6 per bushel range. Right now it's $3.80. It's too low, and it's right at the cost of production. I don't see it going much further down, or else people won't grow it.
There's a wonderful story of J.P. Morgan being interviewed by a reporter, and the reporter said, Mr. Morgan, it said that you can predict the market. Is that true? And he said, I can tell you exactly what the market will do. It will fluctuate.
Exactly. Can't predict it. But it will, I mean, I'm almost certain grain prices will go up over the next 5 years, on average, from where they are right now. I mean, it's hard to imagine them not.
Right. I mean, yeah, when you're at break even below the cost of
Right.
production.
And I'm putting my money where my mouth is. Any farm lease I'm signing right now, I'm doing on a grain price variable lease. I want farmers locked in where if grain prices go up, they're paying me more. And they're happy to sign that lease because it's good for them.
Right.
So, I mean, all of our farms are set up that way. Because I want to bet on grain prices going up.
Do any of you guys see an increased use for corn and like the ethanol and like for cars and go into the future like that instead of gasoline?
No, I think it's peaked. It's actually, I mean,
Because it didn't go very far.
it's corrosive to engines, and it was a lovely idea to produce renewable energy instead of taking fossil fuels for energy. However, it's not as good for engines, and it eats into food supplies. Both of those are negatives. I think that ethanol won't go away, but I think it's not going to increase, I don't believe. I think that other biofuels like butanol and There's another one that people are producing with switchgrass and other types of bio solids, but I don't think that corn ethanol is going to increase in production, to answer your question.
Ethanol was a big driver in corn prices, 08 through 12, and the government mandated an increase from 10 to 15% blend in ethanol with fuel. If that changes, if they back off of that 15% mandate, you could see a further fall in corn prices. It's just a loss of demand.
Well, 3 years ago, or not 3 years ago, they used to have a bunch of companies, and then they switched to 3 companies now that produce all the ethanol. And I know one of the owners of one of them, he makes 150 million gallons a year.
So Brian, I find your business fascinating. So what's some of the due diligence you do prior to purchasing these farms? So I mean, how do you make the decision on which one you're going to purchase?
Sure.
You spend a lot of time on finance and management strategies. What's some insight into that arena? Matt, you're next with how are you thinking about this new property that you want to purchase in this building you want to build? Where you want to build?
There's 2 components. There's the real estate and then the production value of a farm. So we'll look at it and where its location is, because everyone says real estate's location, 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 which is somewhat true. You want to buy something, if you're going to buy any property, whether it's your house, a farm, anything, the reason you want to buy it is the same reason the next person's going to want to buy it from you. And the reason that you don't want to buy it is the same thing. You don't want to have a red flag of why someone wouldn't want to buy something, whether it's in the middle of nowhere, it's not close to grain markets, it's not productive, there's no good tenant farmers around it, etc. There's no water source. So you look at all those factors. But from our standpoint, it's a pretty simple equation on how productive it is. That's what a farmer is willing to pay. A farmer looks at the same productivity, soil production, soil chemistry, logistics, that I'm going to look at when I buy it. So if I find a dynamite farm that has really good, deep, productive soil that rates out great, he's going to come in and pay me a better rate, a rental rate. So it's a better financial play for me to buy a productive farm. And then I take that and throw in location as well. But really, I just want it for my investors, the numbers have to be as best as possible from annual production value, how much a farmer's going to pay me, and what I think it will appreciate to. I mean, obviously, if it's right on a highway and maybe someday Walmart might buy the property, who knows? There's a value there too. But you take all that into account, it's got to be a good financial long-term decision and a productive farm. I want something that someone else is going to want down the road for whatever reason.
I was hoping you were going to throw in cash flow in there somewhere.
Well, I can. If you want. So yeah, the simple equation is: let's say I spend, let's say I spend $5,000 to buy an acre, and a farmer's going to rent that from me for $225. That is essentially let's say it's $250. That's a 5% gross return. So take out management, taxes, liability insurance, my net investor gets about a 3.8% return, which they're willing to accept these days. Really, if I can get my investor a 2 or 3 or 3.5% return, they're pretty happy with grain prices where they are. So the cash flow is for me, the cash flow analysis is what the farmer is willing to pay me compared to what I paid for the farm. Now for a farmer, it's totally different. He takes into account what I have to pay in lease, and then all of his input costs and labor costs and machinery and everything like that, and then if there's enough left over after the harvest, hopefully, for him to have a cash flow. Does that answer what you wanted me to talk about? I can go ahead.
You can talk about buying like this new property I'm looking at. Okay. A couple things go into buying. Same thing for a horse farmer. Buying property is going to be the same thing for a farmer. Same thing he's looking at for property. I mean, it's going to be location and it's going to be your soil type. And don't ever underestimate, think, oh, I have a horse, what does soil type matter? Because you can have the best facilities in the world, and if you don't have good soil, you have nothing, okay? You've got to have good land. And that's why this Thoroughbred business right here with all the limestone in the soil, and that's why it's located in central Kentucky. So I've identified the farm I want to buy. I mean, I know I've got to get it, the clock's ticking. I've got to get in there. It's going to cost me about $6,000 an acre to do it. It's a 30-acre farm. It's right next to a farm that my brother Gus and I own together. I've got to get it. I mean, I can't afford to let somebody else get in there and get it, and I know I've got to get my hands on this piece. It's got 0 fence on it. It's got 0 infrastructure. I've got no barns. I've got no water lines. I've got nothing. All right, the only thing I've got is a property fence, which is mine already. So it's going to cost me $180,000 to get this farm. I know I'm trying to turn it into a training facility. I already put my walker up. I've already got paddocks on the other farm. It ties in. It's all connected. I know a barn's going to cost me, the barn that I want to put up there is going to be about a $200,000 barn. Then I've got to build, 30 acres. I'm going to fence the whole thing. You're looking at another $30,000 to $40,000 in fence. And, oh, by the way, it's also not in grass, which is like a nightmare for me. So I got to spend a year to get this property back in grass. Okay, I don't have this huge sum of money coming to me to buy this farm. So I have to cash flow. Everything I'm doing is on cash flow, right? So I've got to have horses. If I'm not using that property, I don't have money coming in on it, I can't make the payments. So I am right now trying to figure out how I'm going to get this farm turned back into grass, get the barn built, get fences up, and get horses on it. I know that every horse that I can put on that farm, that I can generate $6 per horse per day. And I've got that number over the last couple of years through leasing everything. All right, I came right in. It was a perfect time. All the horse farm, the horse market was absolutely crashing. I've been able to come in. I've been able to lease whatever horse farm I wanted. It's worked great. It's been a safety net for me. It's like I'm just got this nice safety net, and if horses left, I'm on a per horse per day lease for the farm owner, so I could walk away from it. And that was a great way for me to get started, but I'm a big boy now. I've passed that point, and I'm still leasing a lot of land. I mean, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing for me to do right now. All these horse truck facilities are out there; they're built. But and I'm never wanting to flip this land. Like, this is land that I want to buy that my kids can sell someday. Okay, I have no intention. When I get my hands on it, it's not leaving my hands. Rome wasn't built overnight, but I am building an empire. I got big dreams. But so I've got to sit here and cash flow this, and for me it's got to be this huge. It's going to be this huge upfront investment to get all this stuff built and get it ready to get the horses on it, so I can make the payments. And that's what I'm working through right now. And I've got to look at realistically how big does the barn need to be? How many horses can I get on that? How many pasture wise? Now I'm a little bit of advantage of this since I'm building a training facility. We broke 40 yearlings last year, going to be close to that again this year. With my training horses, they're spending a lot of time in stalls, so I can get away from the 1 horse per 5 acres kind of ratio. I can put a lot more horses on there, and I'm going to have the paddock set up so they can get, turn down paddocks for a couple hours and come back. So I've got a little bit of advantage on that, and that'll help me to make the payments on it. Some other variables that go in there are clients paying the bills. You get 2 or 3 clients that maybe have 4 or 5 yearlings that you're breaking at one time, and they get 60, 90 days behind you. It's bad times because you're relying on that money to come in, and you might be able to handle 30 days pretty easy, 60 days you're like, and then at 90 days you're going to see this guy trying to figure out what your next move is going to be, waiting for that next payment to be. And I don't know why, because if the rest of the world operated like this, operated like the Thoroughbred business, it would cease to operate. Like, it seems to be an okay trend in the horse business to pay every 3 or 4 months. I don't know if y'all had that through Chimneys or paying stud fees.
We had very few no pays, but we had quite a few slow pays, and our policy was, pretty cut and dry. At 60 days you get a phone call from me, and at 90 days you get a letter from our lawyer. And we're not the bank. Pay us.
Yeah, and it's tough, and that's been one of the biggest things for me in growing the business here is because when you start, you're going to get all the people who have been bounced from other farms. You learn later why, but you take them in and you get them in there, and then you figure out how to become a debt collector, which I'm extremely good at these days. But you know the value. What's important for me is to know the value of every horse that's on my farm. So I can know, and I used to think success would be when I could turn a horse away, when the farm was completely full and I could turn a horse away. Success is when you can turn clients away. Like when you can look at that guy and say, no way, no how. That's when you're successful, is when you can finally tell, you're comfortable enough and your business is going good enough that you can push that guy off and let him go be somebody else's ulcer.
Can you talk a little bit more about getting clients and keeping clients, especially in the horse industry, new clients and things like that?
I've never done any advertising. Everything's been word of mouth. As far as keeping them, that's all on you. And your name in this game is everything. Your reputation is everything. And a horse will tell him, my dad's always told me that a horse will tell on you every time, right? So when those clients come out and their horse looks bad or not things aren't what like you said you are, there is no shortage of competition in Central Kentucky for boarding facilities. So just you've got to have a lot of integrity, and you have to know, you have to have the experience and know what you're doing. And that's kind of our niche right now, and I think the reason we've been able to grow it is we've bred 100 mares each year for the last couple of years. Myself, my brother Gus do all the teasing. So somebody calls us, how's my mare doing? Great, she's red hot, she's going to the breeding shed, let's check her today. Tell her everything about that. They don't have to go through a secretary, they don't have to, you know, they know they're going to talk to you, and you know, you're going to know exactly what's going on with their mare. But you will lose clients at some point. They're going to come and go for whatever reason. Maybe there's death in the family, and the children don't want to keep up with it. Maybe they don't like what you're doing. They've got different philosophies about raising a horse, and that's fine. But it's going to be your reputation and how your horses look, how your horses perform, and how your horses sell. And if you do a good job at that, it'll come.
I think that's exactly right. First is horse care, and it's got to be second to none. When someone comes on the farm to see their horse, the mane needs to be pulled and the brass needs to be polished, and they need to look like $1 million. When I first went to Three Chimneys, there was 100 acres and 3 employees, and I think there was 1 shank and a coffee can for a feed scoop, and I couldn't find a hoof pick on the farm, and really one of the first days I called my boss up and said, you need to spend some money, you know, we can't take good care of horses this way. And he said, well, when we get more horses, you know, we can do that. And I said, you're not going to get more horses until you do that. First, you provide the great care, then you get the customers, and that's exactly what happened. And then customer service. Some farms are terrible at it. I mean, really terrible at it. And you need to be great at it. And as Matt was saying, I mean, there was a time when I was doing all the teasing and I did all the foaling, and they could get on the phone with me and I could tell them what was going on. We grew to the point where I didn't. And so I had to have people in place that were in that position. And I always, you know, we had 4 broodmare divisions and a yearling division and a stallion division, and each one had a manager, and that manager's job was to be on the phone with the owners of those horses all the time. And it wasn't just call them up when the mare foals or call them up when a foal dies. Call them and say, hey, I saw your 2-year-old ran great yesterday. I mean, don't make it that every time
you never want to have a client go,
there.
uh-oh.
Yeah.
That's how, you don't want to hear, if you're hearing that on the end of the line, you're not calling that person enough.
Yeah, no, it's exactly right. There's so many people, they never get a phone call unless it's, oh, by the way, your horse died. You know, it's, you would have a relationship with them that's built on more than that. And in fact, what really happens, I won't say all the time, because God knows we have customers who are just royal pains in the ass. But most of the customers, because you go through the high times and the low times together, you really develop very close personal relationships with them.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, really close. You wouldn't think it in some unusual group that I would never have considered myself to be friends with from all over the world. And you've got this common bond of a horse, and it's kind of, you'll find yourself going to dinner, and not just you, my wife will go, the kids will go. I mean, it's amazing how close you can get to these people, which is a good thing, because you build that loyalty, and you know, you can just never, it's like anything, you just don't ever break that trust.
Does it make you nervous that as you're like getting bigger and you're gonna have to eventually delegate, like you said, to?
No, we're at that point now, to be honest. Like it's, I've got Courtney, and she's running, you know, she's in there and she's running a certain part of the farm. She's taking care of a lot of the brood mares, and I've got Gus running all the yearlings and young horses and doing all the breaking. But it's still, I'm still there. I'm still going through, even though they're calling and all my clients know who Courtney is, they all know who Gus is. I'm going through the farms, I'm looking at the horses. They can call me, I can communicate with them about their horse. They understand if I have to call and say, hey, let me ask Gus, he hauled that mare to the breeding shed this morning, let me ask what kind of cover she got. They're okay with that. I call Gus, talk to him, 5 minutes later I call him back. Like, they understand that. So it's not 100% me just doing that anymore. But you have good people in place that you're taking care of. Goes back to what Dan was saying earlier about paying them and taking care of. Because It is not. If you have any intention of not having a 7-day-a-week job, don't get in the horse business, because it is 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and just like any other kind of farming.
Getting bigger and delegating for me, there were two parts to it. One was that Robert and I had to go to Florida one day to look at a horse. And you know, it was a very expensive horse, and we needed to fly down that day and fly back that night. And it was in the middle of breeding season. And we went down to Florida and looked at the horse, and we missed our flight coming back. And I had to call my assistant managers and say, I'm not going to be there in the morning. You have to do the teasing. You have to do the vet work. You need to make this happen. And I came back, and they were perfect. They had done it perfectly. And I realized if I don't let them do this, they're going to leave and go somewhere where somebody will let them do this. And so I started to delegate more, and then also right around that same time had kids, and realized that they were asleep when I left the house in the morning, and they were asleep when I came home at night, and I didn't want to live that way, and didn't want to raise my children that way. And so the solution there was get bigger so that you can delegate more.
And it's tough to let go. I would say
It is tough
my
to let
management
go.
style is just to the right of Genghis Khan. And it's tough. I mean, I'm sorry, I came from Marine Corps infantry background. I mean, it's like this, and it is so tough. And I've had to adjust your management styles, and not just for like, you know, from year to year, but from person to person, and relax a little bit, and learning to delegate has just been, I can't tell you how hard that's been for me to learn how to delegate and learn how to put responsibility on people and not triple check them.
And adding to that, it's not just delegating from now on, this is your responsibility, but understanding that they aren't you. And they're not going
They might not do it the same way you did it. That's tough to swallow.
It's tough to swallow, except that, I mean, my style became, these are the goals. This is what you need to accomplish. These are our values. Get it done. And I'm going to judge you by whether or not you get it done, not by how you do it, as long as you adhere to our values.
They hang on the wall in the Three Chimneys breeding shed.
They do in every barn in the farm.
I haven't been to any of them, but
Yeah.
I love it when I
Yeah.
go in there and see that.
Delegating's hard, but it gets easier. It gets easier. And I'll tell you, this is, I guess it's partly delegating, but a great lesson that I learned. Robert, after I'd been at Three Chimneys about 2 years, Robert sent me to a 1-week-long management course at Harvard Business School. And it was pretty incredible. It was really intense, and it was pretty incredible. And I was very nervous because I thought everybody was going to be smarter than me, and I thought the horse business is different. They're not going to understand my business. And you know, you get there and you find out business is business, and it doesn't matter if it's mattresses or widgets. You know, it's all the same. But the very first day of this class, the professor said, "Now I'm going to tell you something right now this morning. That's the most important, the easiest thing and the most important thing you're going to learn all week. When one of your employees comes to you with a problem, the only appropriate answer is, 'That's a very interesting problem. Thank you for letting me know about it. What are you going to do?' Bring me the solution." That's part of delegating.
Any other questions?
Is there anything that y'all would have done differently upon graduating college compared to what you did do upon graduating college?
I didn't graduate college, so I would have graduated college.
I don't want to be, God, no. I like the path I took, but I think if you're looking for advice on what to do, it's every step of the way, right after you graduate, figure out how you're going to build towards what your goal is. Don't take a job just because it's a job, or think of how this is going to better me to my goal, and think about that as you yourself have to have a path. And it sounds very philosophical and stupid, but the fact is, anything you do is a waste of time if you're not building towards what you really ultimately want to accomplish.
I agree with that. I think that's very true. I've had a game plan since I was probably 17, 18, and pretty much follow that exactly with a few twists and turns along the way. But no, I wouldn't change anything, even, and I know that's, everybody says that, even the mistakes I've made have been pretty important life lessons, even if they set me back financially or whatever, but they're ingrained in here now, and I wouldn't change that.
I don't think, I wouldn't change anything. I think you look back at the time and you think you would make some changes. I look back on paths that I went down 20 years ago. I wouldn't change that. It kind of shaped who I am now and what I've become. I would tell you, you're at a stage in your life that opportunity is yours. Get out, see the world on somebody else's nickel. Take that opportunity, network, make as many relationships as you can, because you will build on that. That'll be something you'll find will be very important in your professional life going forward, is all those relationships you make as soon as you come out of college.
And it's a lot more efficient to learn from somebody who's smart, who's doing it, than to try to figure it out on your own. I'm not saying don't try to figure it out on your own, because you will, but you will figure it out on your own, whether you're working for somebody or whether you're not. But there's so much knowledge you can gain from someone who is successful. Pick out somebody who is where you want to be and figure out how to learn from them.
I can't say that any better. It is so critically important. Every job I ever took was a step down in salary from the job that I had just left. And I took the job because I want to learn from this person.
Be bold. Don't let anybody, just be bold. Just go for it. I mean, if I went through the list of people when I was starting, and I'll start with my dad and Mr. Hancock sitting in the Claiborne office, and I came home from Afghanistan, and they looked at me and said, "You're going to do what? You'll never make it. Why don't you step over here and handle stallions for us for a year, and we'll kind of see how that goes." And I said, "Nah, I'm going to go try this." I mean, so you're going to have to be bold, and you have to be gutsy, and I don't know. I kind of thrive on people telling me I can't accomplish something, so it's kind of sick, twisted world I got.
But I think the most successful people I know are folks that have been told no along the way. They've been told they can't do it, you can't do it, and they found a way to be successful. And you have to have some drive. You have to have drive and be bold to do whatever your dreams are.
Can't be afraid to fail.
That's right.
Fail every day. It's okay. It's how you pick yourself up and keep moving.
What's weird about agriculture is you guys are all, if you're going to go into career in agriculture, there's no, I mean, yeah, you can go work for a big, huge conglomerate like Monsanto or something like that to get a wealth of experience, but really, most of you are going to be forced into being entrepreneurs in some way, or businessmen of your own in some way. So you have a difficult path. There's no career fair for ag students that I know of, where you can go in and there are people, you just hand in your resume and some big company gives you a starting salary, et cetera. You know what I mean? You got a difficult path, and which is exciting and difficult at the same time. But my point is, take some business courses or take some internships from people that are business people in the field of agriculture. Because no one fails. They just run out of money, almost always. So figure out how to make money in this world. You'll be all right.
Brad, can you help with that?
That's I'm going to put that on my wall. That's about the.
You know what's way harder than learning how to tease a mare properly? Learning how to write payroll and take out payroll taxes. Learn how to do that at school. Don't worry about learning it. And I'm just going to speak for whatever. You can learn the horse stuff when you get out there and get your hands on. Learn how to run a business. Take business classes. You hit the nail on the head. Horses are easy.
Critical thinking, good communication skills, imperative.
I'd love to give you an prompt that.
I know that was beautiful.
And the ironic question about what you said, Matt, is you thrive on being told no. I was told no on a graduate school class here, so
There
that's
you go.
one of those things that was, I couldn't take it as an undergrad, and I kind of put a little burn on myself.
Well, once again, we really, really appreciate you all's time and taking time to spend with us. It's been a great discussion. I really enjoyed it. I'm sure they have as well. So let's give them a round of applause.